Welcome to week 10. We're covering chapter 10, stress management and sleep. So, first, let's talk about stress. So, we have a stressor that is physical or psychological, and anything that produces physical or psychological reactions. Stress response, however, is the reaction to that specific stressor. And stress is just a general physical and emotional state that accompanies with the stress response. So, first we have the nervous system consists of brain, spinal cord, and nerves. In there, we have autonomic nervous system, which has two different divisions. We have the parasympathetic division, which is doing the slowing metabolism, restoring energy supplies, and is just excitatory system. Sympathetic nervous system reacts to danger. So this is your fight or flight, which we will talk later, and other challenges by almost instantly accelerating body processes. So the parasympathetic is just when you are resting, your rest and digest, you can think about that. And sympathetic nervous system is due to flight or fight. So those are good distinctions to remember for the exam. So going further into the sympathetic nerves and different neurotransmitters. So we have nerves that use neurotransmitters and they affect almost every organ because all of your body is connected by neurons. And first we're going to discuss is neuroepinephrine, which is a very major neurotransmitter in our body, and it is released by the sympathetic nervous system into the specific tissues to increase their functions in the face or of the increased activity. When it is released by the brain, norepinephrine causes arousal. So this is your attention, awareness, and alertness. And it also called the noradrenaline. But so think about it this way. If you're running away from something, for example, a bear, you need your body to release this neurotransmitter in order for your responses to quicken and your other organs to shut down, not fully, but you don't need to digest anything when you're running away. So, this really helps you get away from whatever it is in the flight or fight situation. So, we have physical responses to stressors. So, the endocrine system is a very major one in there. This is just a system of glands, tissues, and cells that secretes hormones into the bloodstream to influence the metabolism and other body processes. We have a hormone, which is a chemical messenger produced in the body and transports in the bloodstream to target cells or organs for specific regulation of the activities. We have physiological changes occur in the result of release of key hormones. So think about when you're really, really stressed, a lot of cortisol gets released and it is secreted by the cortex, which is your outer layer of the adrenal gland. And it's also called hydrocortisone. Epinephrine, a hormone secreted by medulla, inner core of the adrenal gland, that affects the functioning of organs involved in responding to a stressor. And it's also called the adrenaline. In addition to the brain releases endorphins, chemicals that have pain inhibiting effects. So these are very, very important when you are chronically stressed because too much cortisol is in your bloodstream is actually very has very negative side effects. That if, for example, you were under high pressure or stress for 10 years, it have very significant impact in decreasing your lifespan. So cortisol is important and epinephrine, of course, but too much of it in the bloodstream is leads to a lot of negative side effects. So as we talked about before, flight or fight, this is your defense reaction and it prepares a person for a conflict or escape. So imagine you are walking home at night and somebody is out of place and is trying to um, catch you. You're either going to freeze and you're going to try to fight it off, or you're going to run away. But in some instances, people do freeze, and that is being developed part of the flight or fight reaction. It hasn't come to its own terminology, but it will soon. And so think about this response as flight, fight, or freeze. And this is how you just manage these high stress situations that occur. And a lot of things happen in the flight or fight reaction. So, for example, let's take the pancreas, and it decreases secretions because digestion has no need for your fight or flight, as I've talked before. Your pupils dilate, which gives in extra light and um, for more sensitive vision, so you can really um, see the different shadows to make you give you as much information as you need to deal with this current situation. There's bronchi dilate to allow more air into your lungs, so that way you have more air capacity to fight or flight. And all of these different body parts play a major role in they either shut down or they increase their activity. So after you've had this flight or fight, you need to return to homeostasis, which is just stability and consistency. And homeostasis is very different for different people. So if you're in chronic stress, your homeostasis is much higher than um, a person who is not stressed chronically. So just think of it, this is your stability and consistency in your functioning. This is for a person who is chronically stressed, this might be that they're still able to relax and they're not having a panic attack at that moment, and versus somebody who is just taking a rest because they had a stressful situation occur to them. So in modern life, it's inappropriate to say the fight or flight reaction as a survival mechanism because of our biological heritage. And many stresses do not require physical response, and that's why it's an issue. Because when you do go into your flight or fight response, a lot of hormones, as we talked about before, especially cortisol, gets released. And all of that, if not utilized and released properly, like by exercise or however you, um, whatever makes you feel better. If you don't do those things, those just build up. And for example, a stressful situation at school or work is not the same as a stressful situation of a kidnapping, but your body responds to the same way. And so that is an issue in our current understanding. Of course, there's cognitive and psychological responses to stressors. We have two factors that can reduce the magnitude of stress and response. This is a successful prediction and perception of control. The way we appraise potentially stressful situation is highly individual. So the way person A would exhibit a perception of a final exam is very different than person would be, because one person might think, oh, I've studied, it's not a big deal, I did well on the midterm, versus a person who is person B who thinks it's just the end of the world. So person A will have less release of cortisol in comparison to person B, and that stress over time, even small stress, accumulates and has negative side effects. So, this is stress level, performance, and well being. As you can see, we have low to high and then stress level on the bottom. So, too little stress, and then optimum stress, too much stress, and distress. So, optimum stress is usually what occurs to athletes. They need a little bit of stress in order to perform, at their peak, but not too much. So they're still able to manage within, and then if it goes too overwhelming, goes into too much stress, and then it's no longer benefiting them in any way. And as you can see, too little stress could lead to boredom, low motivation. Um, Optimum stress is high motivation. Too much stress could make you fatigue, and distress and burnout is um, leads to an anxiety, anger, and illness. So, in performance space, you really want to be in the optimum stress when you're performing. So there's effective and ineffective responses to stresses. Um, there's a lot of them are based on personality and what really works for you, and also temperament. We often moderate or learn to control them by our personality or how we respond to different things. There's also effective behavioral responses such as talking, laughing, exercising, and just learning time management skills. If you're very stressed out around exams, maybe you need to study 2 weeks before, maybe you need to study every week for a little bit. So there's also ineffective behavioral responses, which include overeating, expressing hostility, using tobacco, alcohol, or other drugs to really manage your stress. So really think about and be honest with yourself of, is your coping strategies effective or ineffective? Are you getting drunk just because you're stressed, or are you trying to do something about it actively to reduce your stress? Personality and stress. As we've said before, personality has a lot to do with how we perceive stress. Some personality traits are enable people to deal with stress more successfully. And we call this hardiness, the form of optimism. Optimism allows some people to view potential stressors, the challenges and opportunities, instead of just that they're going to fail. They just think about it. Oh, this is a nice challenge that I haven't conquered yet. And resilience. Resilience really allows people to accept reality, hold on to the belief that life is meaningful, and improvise. In current research, resilience is something that is a very hot topic right now. We're not exactly sure if resilience is something we're born with or something that we're able to learn. For example, in studies of children that are from orphanages, some are born with resilience and they lead a great life afterwards when they are adults, and some fall into the maladaptive behaviors that their parents or their genes that have done previously do. So, really, it is a very hot topic. And if you're interested, just look it up in the Google Scholar. There's a lot of different studies that they have done on resilience. Generation Z. So you probably guys are aware of different generations. We have millennials, Generation Z. So people belonging to Gen Z are born between 1997 and 2015. So most likely you guys all fit into it. And then they also have a greater response to day-to-day stressors and are more likely to report poor mental health. Over half of the Gen Zers find support by using social media, but 45% say social media makes them feel judged, and 38% feel bad about themselves because of it. So, and that is an issue due to Generation Z, is because now everybody has an iPhone or a phone that has internet. You see kids with that are 5 having tablets and so ever. And so that really impacts your health in comparison to when calculators were the biggest thing in the millennial generation. Also, gender and stress. Women report a higher level of stress than men, and strict adherence to gender roles, however, limits one's responses to stress, can in itself become source of stress. So If you are fifth grader and your math teacher tells you that it's okay, girls are not good at math, and you just believe that, maybe that will eliminate some stress down the road because you think, oh, girls are not good at math. But then also, it might create a lot of issues because you limit yourself in your options. Also, cultural background is very different. Students come to the US from around the world, but the resulting clash of cultures can be a source of stress. Stressors' reactions are influenced by one's upbringing and cultural background. So, some things could be very disrespectful in some cultures versus here it's typical, and that could cause a lot of stress. Of course, experience tells it all. If you've had very stressful experiences when you were younger, you know that, hey, I survived that, that this is no big deal. I can do it again. And they can overcome whatever negative experience that are about to come their way. The physical, emotional, and cognitive and behavioral symptoms of excess negative stress are intimately interrelated. The more intense the emotional response, the stronger the physical response. So some people, when they get stressed, are even getting sick, like throwing up, and etc. So just because you're upset at something, you could have severe physical responses too that are correlated. So symptoms of excessive stress show differently in different silos. So in physical, you might have dry mouth, fatigue, frequent illness. You might have a lot of headaches. In cognitive, you might have some confusion, inability to concentrate, negative thinking. In emotional, you might experience some anxiety, depression, irritability, behavioral, you would cry, um, problems with communicating, having issues with sleep, having issues with social um, situations. So, excessive stress really shows differently in different categories and also in different people. General adaptation syndrome, so GAS, is a pattern of stress response consisting of three stages. So, this is the alarm, resistance, and exhaustion. We have eustress, which is resulting from pleasant stressor. De-stress, stress resulting from unpleasant stressor. In the alarm stage, which includes this sequence in the flight or fight reaction, it's more susceptible to disease or injury because it's geared up to deal with the crisis. So, really think of this alarm stage as okay, now my body's really releasing all those hormones. And then we're moving into the resistance stage, which is the level of homeostasis. So this is past whatever you either fled or you fought your situation. Now you're in the resistance. So you're trying to gain that homeostasis. And your body is more resistant to disease and injury than normal because your body is already prepared to fight to get to that homeostasis. And then exhaustion is a life threatening results when a stressor persists or several stresses occur in succession. So, this is very important. Of eustress, as you can see, doesn't really, it has a pleasant stress. So you might be afraid of public speaking, but afterwards you actually feel much better about yourself, or something that is a pleasant stressor. Maybe you're riding a roller coaster, and this stress is something very negative. Maybe being afraid of a test or anything else. So, really, in the alarm stage, most people actually don't go into exhaustion because that's life threatening. And so, most of the people just end at the resistance stage because you're trying to, if you gain your homeostasis, there's no need to go to exhaustion. So, just think of those. Alarm stage and resistance stage are the most important that most people experience. And exhaustion is just very rare because it's very, very life threatening. So this is just a level of normality resistance to injury and general adaptation of the syndrome. As you can see, in an alarm reaction, resistance to injury, not so much. You're below average. In the stage of resistance, you're definitely able to prevent that injury. Your body is ready to fight and it's strong. And then if you go into the exhaustion, your your immune system is low. It could welcome any sorts of diseases. Stress and wellness and allostatic load. So, allostatic load, I don't know if you guys are familiar with this term, is a long term negative impact of stress and response of the body. So, this is when a person has chronic stress. A person's allostatic load depends on many factors, including genetics, life experiences, emotional and behavior responses to stress. And allostatic load can increase over time. So this is just very dependent per your history and who you are and how your perception of different stressors is. We have stress in specific different conditions. So as we talked about it before, we have stress in the immune system. Stress correlates really well with the immune system. When there's low stress, your immune system is ready to fight whatever diseases. When you're chronically stressed, your immune system is lowered and is welcome to different diseases. So you might get the flu more often, or you might get sick once a month, whatever it is, and it is due to chronic stress. As we talked about in chapter 3, cardiovascular disease. So during the stress response, your heart rate increases, blood vessels constrict due to those muscles, and then the blood pressure rises. Chronic high blood pressure is a major cause of strokes and heart attacks. We will talk about it in next week about the different types of strokes and heart attacks. People who respond to situations with anger and hostility are more likely to have a heart attack. And if you think about why, and that's because due to all of those different hormones and that are being released to your bloodstream, which go into circulate through your heart, and that's where the buildup occurs. Of course, there's many other health problems that could be worsened by stress. So if you have headaches and migraines, if you're in a high stress environment, you could those could get worse. If you have insomnia or fatigue, those could get worse. So anything could be worsened by stress. Any major changes in life that requires adjustments and accommodation can be a source of stress. However, your changes that could cause stress are also dependent on your past experiences and your personality. Moving across the country by yourself might cause everybody stress, but for some people who are more aware of themselves and how they deal with coping mechanisms and stuff like that might deal with that major move better than somebody who has never experienced big changes before. So, of course, everybody experiences a little bit of stress due to daily hassles. Nearly all college students share stresses like academic stress, interpersonal stress, because you're just finding yourself and who you are going to be as an adult, time pressures because you're taking so many different classes, financial concerns if you're paying for your school and working, or if somebody else is supporting you. You're still not, most people in college are not financially independent and secure, and then you might have worries about the future and will you ever get a job that is high paying? Will you like your job? Are you making the right decision and choosing your major? So a lot of college students are having similar stresses. So if you feel alone about something, don't, because there's so many people who are just like you, and you just need to find those people to really help you talk all your worries out. Of course, common stress, job related stressors. You have very tight schedules. People are given opportunities to shape their job descriptions and responsibilities. Job satisfaction goes up and stress levels go down. So if you feel like you are a big part of the company and you're a big part of whatever that company is trying to establish, you will feel better about the job because it is something that you contribute, and if somebody appreciates your contributions, that really helps relieve stress. If job related or college related stress is severe or chronic, it can result in burnout and exhaustion, which we just talked about, that not a lot of people go into the exhaustion stage, but it could be life threatening. So people who are highly driven and people in helping professions are especially susceptible um, to burnout. Interpersonal relationships, significant stress and support. So if you're having an issue in your romantic relationship or with your best friends, that could cause stress in long term or in that short term. Social stressors, social networks, real or virtual, can improve your ability to deal with stress, but also become stressors. So you might have joined a virtual group to play a game. You might feel support because you guys share the same goal and the same interests, but then you might get stressed because you feel like you need to outperform, or maybe you're not performing enough where you feel bad. It all really depends. A little bit of balance. There's also environmental stressors that are external, and maybe they're in a noisy atmosphere and they're trying to study, unpleasant odors, pollen, industrial accidents, violence, natural disasters. Your environment really either decreases stress or increases stress. So, exercise is a very great stress reliever because instead of releasing cortisol, it releases other um, hormones and neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin, which are great for your mental health and make you feel better and decrease stress. Um, Of course, people who exercise compulsively risk overtraining, which might they could lead to injury, and then they won't be able to participate in exercise. So just balance is needed with exercise. Also, nutrition. As we talked before, nutrition has a big deal in your BMI, which leads to a lot of other health risks with a higher BMI versus normal BMI and life expectancy. So, eating well, like everybody says, is great for your body and your mental health. Limit or avoid caffeine, having social groups, so having great friends to foster relationships with, family ties, and being involved in a group because every human being likes to be involved in a group. You want to feel belongingness. It's very important for our health. More than 25% of college students report stress because they're lonely. Um, and college might be, well, there's so many people, but you might be alienated due to your culture or your gender or your skills. Um, but really try to maybe volunteer, speak with other classmates, Organize your own trips or your own clubs, and don't minimize what you're feeling because it'll just build up. Communication, so self disclosure, listening, and feedback are very important on the communication. You want to make sure that you are sharing and then also the other person is sharing and communicating well with you. Conflict resolution, always clarify the issue, find out what each person wants, and work out a plan for change. Spiritual wellness, which is effective for coping skills and higher level overall well-being. Doesn't have to be religious. It might be something that activities that are meaningful to you. So maybe doing yoga, maybe going on a run, whatever it is. Maybe you are liking writing, and that's how you can set time for yourself to write out whatever events that are stressful to you and how you're planning to manage them. Time management is a very important skill, not just in college, but also in life, because once you graduate, there's so many different things that you can be part of and job. And then once when you get a family, or if you are already a part of family, time management is a very important skill for life. There's different cognitive techniques, avoiding negative self-talk. So you want to make sure that you're finding whenever you're talking badly about yourself to yourself, that you change your perspective and try to be more positive because it does really impact your stress levels. So avoiding negative self-talk, focusing on negatives, and negative self-talk is school is discouraging, nothing but a hassle one after the other. Positive self-talk could look like school is pretty challenging, has its difficulties, but there are certainly rewards and a really mixture of good and bad. If you're expecting the worst, overgeneralizing, minimizing, blaming others, expecting perfection, all could lead to negative self talk, but then you also should just try to reframe into positive self talk because it does impact your stress level. There's different relaxation responses. Lowering your heart rate, breathing, metabolism slows down, blood pressure and oxygen consumption decreases, blood flow into the brain and skin increases as brain waves shift from ultra beta rhythm to relaxed alpha rhythm. Mindfulness, being intentional in whatever you're doing, trying to be not judging, um, and not striving. So you're trying to emphasize health in physical and mental. And there's very um, many different activities that you can partake that could include mindfulness. There's also biofeedback, hypnosis, self hypnosis, massages. You try to minimize unhealthy coping techniques that include alcohol, tobacco, or other drugs, and binge eating. And then if you feel like you've done everything and you need help, that's no problem. There's plenty of different things on campus that you could seek out. And sometimes that may indicate more serious problems. So it might just not be just stress, but it might be depression and anxiety, other emotional problems. Suicide is seriously considered or attempted. Hallucinations, delusions, incoherent speech, or loss of memory can occur. Alcohol or drugs are used to extent that they impair normal functioning. So some symptoms could be stress, and some could actually be something very serious. Depression is a mood disorder characterized by loss of interest, sadness, hopelessness. Sleep is a very important part of healthy living and for your mental and physical health when you're sleeping. Um, it improves memory, creativity, mood. When you get enough sleep, fosters feelings of competence and self worth. Lower food craving, maintains the immune system. Physiology of sleep. So sleep occurs in two phases. We have the non rapid eye movement, which we call non-REM sleep, includes stages of successive deeper sleeps and rapid eye movement. So REM sleep is the second phase of one cycle during which dream occurs. You really want to make sure that you spend as much time as possible in REM because that's where your memory gets consolidated and stored. This is just graph in 8-hour sleep day, sleep time, and all of the different stages. As you can see, it goes from different stages to REM, from those stages again to REM, and then you wake up usually in REM after your dreams. So homeostasis sleep drive is the drive for sleep that builds up the longer that you are awake. So for people who are insomniacs, the longer you go without sleep, the more of a issues that you're creating for your body because your body really needs sleep. Circadian rhythms is the sleep and wake pattern coordinated by the brain's internal clock. And studies have been done in people who are in a lab for 7 days and there's no clock or no way of telling what time of day it is, and there's still a circadian rhythm in those people, even when they don't know what day or if it's day or night or what time it is. So poor quality or insufficient sleep can be associated with a number of health problems and impairments. There's it could cause hallucinations, psychotic symptoms, significant increase in heart attacks risk. As many as 70 million Americans suffer from chronic sleep disorders, insomnia, restless leg syndrome, sleep apnea. This is just graph showing sleep apnea. As you can see, normal breathing goes in and out, and then an obstructive sleep apnea is blocked by the airway. So you definitely want to figure out what is causing your sleep deficiencies, and you want to try to improve your sleep as much as possible. Of course, sleep recommendations differ in what stage we are. So a newborn should sleep 18 to 19 hours, infants a little bit less, older adults really are different from 5 to 6 to 9. So test your knowledge. What sorts of events common to college students can cause stress? This should be an easy one since you guys are college students. Exercise